In this quick tip video, we're going to be revising the original pearl brush that we made, and we're going to be adding some additional elements to it. Oftentimes pearl necklaces will have spacer beads in between the primary pearl beads, and those spacer beads are known as pellets. So we're going to be adding a pellet element to our pearl brush, but we're going to add it in such a way that we will be able to assign one color to the pearls and then a secondary color to the pellets themselves. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to delete this original bead in just a moment, but for the sake of exploration and for the sake of learning, what I want to do is show you how to revise an existing brush. Many times when we get artwork, the brush will not be saved on the artboard like this. You'll simply have the brush on a stroke to a path, and then it's stored inside the brushes palette. All we have to do to work with simply the brushes palette is just drag the artwork out of the brushes palette and onto the artboard. And so we'll click and we'll just drag this guy out here, and it doesn't work. And that's a problem that I've kind of been a little bit frustrated with in the past, but I want to show you how to work around that. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out so that you can see the artboard and outside of the artboard. And if I just simply drag this artwork outside of the artboard, it just shows up. I'm not altogether sure why this happens, but there you go. So I'm going to go ahead and select this, and we're going to be working with this piece of artwork, and I'm going to show you why. I'm going to click and drag this over here and move it over here. Let's get... It's almost impossible to select this if you're too far away. You know, and I didn't want to use the arrow keys to nudge it over. But let's go ahead and compare these two. Here's our original blend, you know, with the stroke on the bottom of it. And here's the brush the way it comes out of the brushes palette. Let's go ahead and expand that group, and there's a group in a group. That's something I don't like, so I'm going to change that right away by dragging that out of there. And that refines that group. So now here's the blend, but it's no longer a blend. Now we can see all of the shapes that make up the steps for the blend. And there's our original ellipse that created the little stroke for depth. And now there's also a rectangle in there, and this is something we did not make. But when we drag a brush out of the brushes palette, it comes out with a rectangle that has no stroke and no fill. Now, if it was sitting on top of everything, I'd be calling it a clipping mask. But functionally speaking, that's essentially what it does right here too. So we're going to go ahead and make good use of this though. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit closer. And we'll use the rounded rectangle to draw our pellets. And so I'm going to go ahead and click and drag, and that's about the shape that I'm looking for. And I'm going to align it to the clipping mask, and I'm going to fill it with the same 50% gray that we started out with originally. And now I'd like to align the pellet with the pearl. And I'm going to select it, and align to selection is what's activated up here, and I'll use the vertical align. So now we're going to do the same thing with the pellet that we did with the original pearl. I'm going to zoom in a bit, but instead of copying, we're going to use a different method. We're going to go up here on the menu bar to Object, Path, and we'll offset the path. And the value that we're going to use is a negative 0.125 value. We'll hit the preview, and it scales it down just exactly where we need it. We'll say OK to this, and now we need to take these points on the bottom, and we're going to move them up a bit. If you use the Shift key, it will constrain the move to the vertical axis, and that's exactly what we need to do. I'm going to get this bottom point, and I'm going to move it up a bit. And let's see. Slight revision here. I'm going to pull this up just a bit more, and that's the highlight shape that we're looking for. I'm going to go ahead and change the fill to white, and then we'll get our blend tool. Click first one object, then the second object, and now we have our blend. And we'll go ahead and reduce the steps. This time I'm simply going to double click the blend tool to obtain the options. We'll go from smooth color to specified steps. We'll hit the preview. And again, we can utilize the arrow key on our keyboard to reduce that. And we can actually watch the reduction take place. And I'm going to go ahead with the same 5-step value and say OK. And to refresh your memory, we came back in and got the the bottom shape, and I'm going to Option or Alt drag it up, and that's so I don't drag it down into the group below. And so I'll now move it down here, and we'll take away the fill and change the stroke to black and 0.125. And I'm going to go ahead and group these two so that Illustrator will see them as a single object. And then what we'll do is reflect the pellet over to the other side of this pearl. And I'm going to go up here and get our Reflect tool, which lives with the Rotate tool. And the hotkey for the Reflect tool is O. There's an anchor point top center of this ellipse, as there is with every ellipse. And I'm going to hold down the Alt Option on a Mac and click that. And that brings up the Reflect dialog. We want to reflect over the vertical axis. So make sure that this is chosen. And you can always check your preview to make sure that it's doing the right thing. But then click Copy. Now I'm going to expand the original. And I should have deleted this already, but let's go ahead and get rid of those guys now. And we have the clipping mask here. And what I'm going to do is to scale the clipping mask to where it comes out to the center point of the pellet. And it's going to want to snap right there. And of course, if you hold the Alt or Option key down, it'll do the other side for you automatically. So with that done, I'm going to go ahead and make our pellet brush. I'm going to shift click the two pellets up there, and we're going to go to our brushes palette and create our pellet brush. It's going to be a pattern brush. I'm going to say OK, and we'll call it Pellets 1, no corner tile. We'll approximate the path, and for the colorization method, it's going to be tints and shades. We'll use our sampler tool here. And this is going to be a little trickier even than the pearl was. It may take more than one click to actually find that 50% gray value. But there I know I found it. I'm going to go ahead and say OK to this. We can see that our pellet brush is in place there. Now the pearl brush, if we zoom out, these pearls have no gap. What we can do is simply remake the original pearl brush with the new clipping mask. And this rectangle with no stroke and no fill, it's expanded the sides out. That will create the spacing that we need to make our pellets fit perfectly in this brush. Now I have a selection tool, and I'm simply going to click and drag this new brush over here to the brushes palette. But now, and this is in the interest of showing you how to revise an existing brush. I'm going to hold down the Alt key, Option on a Mac, and I get the double arrow as if it's going to create a copy. But what we're going to do is drag that guy over here and drag it to that side tile. And this recreates that side tile. All of the settings are there. Everything is perfect. We'll say OK. And now it wants to know, hey, this brush is in use. Do you want to apply these changes to the existing brush? Yes, we do. Absolutely. We'll say OK. And there's the spacing that we're looking for. So now, and this is kind of fun too. We're going to go over to the Appearance palette, and I'm going to bring that window out here so you can see a little better what's going on. And I'm going to need to go down in here, select the pearl path. And when I have the pearl selected, the pearl path, I can see the appearance settings for it. And what I want to do now is simply come down here and add a new stroke. And it comes in as a default one-point line. We're simply going to go ahead and assign the pellet brush to that stroke, making this a compound path. One path, but two brushes. And the second brush, we can actually go ahead and change the color for it. And this is a pretty powerful trick, guys. This can then be saved as a graphic style and can be assigned to any path with a click of a mouse. And of course, we can turn around then and go back to our Appearance palette and change the color of the pearl stroke. And that can then be saved as an additional graphic style. And we can build a library of these. And the graphic style library will contain both of your brushes and the colors that we used for it. And this becomes a very versatile brush. Thank you guys for watching.